Tony Curtis finally talks about Burt Lancaster for the first time. Tony Curtis was born Bernard Schwartz on June 3, 1925 in New York City. He was a huge star during Hollywood's best years, and his life showed both the fancy side and the tough side of being famous. Curtis grew up poor in the Bronx with parents who came from Hungary and were Jewish, and his childhood was full of hard times, but he never gave up. His family had almost no money during the Great Depression, so little Tony did all kinds of small jobs to help. That tough start made him work super hard his whole life, and also made him really understand regular people, so his acting felt real and touched a lot of hearts. Even though life was rough and his dad died when he was young, Tony kept chasing his dreams and ended up becoming one of the most loved movie stars ever. Tony got into acting in a cool, different way. He fought in the Navy during World War II, then went to acting school in New York with a famous teacher named Erwin Piscator. All that stage practice and hard work built the base for a super long career that lasted more than 60 years. At the end of the 1940s, Hollywood people noticed him and he signed with Universal Pictures. His first roles were mostly in crime movies and comedies, and everyone loved his charm, quick jokes, and how good he looked on camera, so he quickly became a hot new actor. But what really made him special was how he could be sweet, scared, or tough all at the same time, so he was awesome in funny love stories and scary thrillers. The 1950s were Tony's big breakout time and made him a top movie star. He was in huge hits like Sweet Smell of Success in 1957, Some Like It Hot in 1959, and The Defiant Ones in 1958. The last one got him a nomination for the Oscar for Best Actor. Some Like It Hot showed off his perfect comedy timing, how he wasn't afraid to play crazy roles. They had two daughters, Kelly Curtis and Jamie Lee Curtis, and both girls became successful actresses too, keeping the family name going. Even after they divorced in 1962, that time together changed both their lives forever. After Janet, Tony married Christine Kaufmann in 1963. She was a beautiful German actress who did a lot of movies in Europe. This marriage opened up Europe for Tony and let him live and work there more. They stayed married until 1968 and had two daughters, Alexandra and Allegra Curtis. Tony mixed his Hollywood life with traveling, European style, and new art stuff. But like a lot of famous couples, the job and personal problems broke them up. Tony's third wife was Leslie Allen in 1968, and it was his longest marriage so far. It lasted 14 years until 1982. This time he wanted a calmer family life after two divorces. Leslie wasn't as famous, but she gave Tony a steady home while Hollywood was crazy. They had two sons, who are Jamie Lee's half-brothers, and the family got even bigger. This marriage showed Tony still wanted a normal life, even with all the ups and downs of being a star. In 1984, Tony married Andrea Savio, another chapter in his love story. They stayed together 8 years until 1992, when Tony was doing deeper, more grown-up roles. Andrea used to be a model and brought cool style and friends into his world. They ended up divorcing too, but it showed Tony kept looking for love even when life was hard and everyone was watching. Tony's fifth wife was Lisa Deutsch in 1993, but it only lasted 1 year. It was short, but it proved he still believed in finding the right person even later in life. Finally, in 1998, Tony married Jill Vandenberg, and this was his last marriage. Jill was a smart businesswoman who cared a lot about family and calm. They stayed together until Tony died in 2010. This last marriage felt like the happy ending of all his searching for love. It gave him support, happiness, and peace in his later years. Tony Curtis, the super charming and funny movie star, finally talked openly about his complicated friendship and work relationship with Burt Lancaster, another huge star from the same time who was always super powerful on screen. Tony said, "Burt was one of those rare actors who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he did it so smoothly you almost didn't notice." Tony remembered that being on set with Burt was exciting but also a little scary. When you walked into a room with Burt, you felt how talented he was right away. He didn't even have to try. Everyone just looked at him, Tony said, showing how much he looked up to Burt even when things got tense. Tony explained that Burt acted totally different from him. Burt planned every single move and word and had to be perfect. I was more go with the flow and liked to play around when I acted. Working with him taught me to be way more careful and exact, Tony said. The differences sometimes annoyed him, but later he was glad because it made him way better. Burt pushed you to see what you weren't good at and then helped you get past it. Tony felt like Burt was quietly teaching him the whole time, even if Burt never said it out loud. He never acted like he was better than anyone. But if you watched, you learned tons. Not just acting stuff, but how to act in the business too. Tony really admired how professional Burt was, but he was honest that sometimes they competed a little. There were times I felt I had to keep up with how strong and magnetic Burt was. Hollywood can make you super competitive, and being around Burt made me want to bring my A game, he said. But it was never mean or angry between them. It was just respect. I wanted to match him, and Burt, maybe without knowing it, made me a better actor. All that little competition made some of my favorite scenes electric. The best moments on screen came when we were both trying our hardest. Tony also told sweet stories that showed Burt's nicer side when the cameras weren't rolling. Off-set, Burt was warm and gave a lot to people. He had this sneaky, dry humor that made you laugh out of nowhere. He'd talk about his kids, his own tough early days, all the real stuff. Those talks showed that behind the big tough guy image was a normal person with worries and dreams and a huge heart. Seeing that side made Tony respect Burt even more. You couldn't just see him as the famous Burt Lancaster. You saw the real guy, and that made every moment with him special. In the end, Tony said his feelings about Burt were a mix of amazement, respect, and a little sadness. Burt was like a storm. He left a mark on everyone. I still use stuff he taught me every day, and I mean that. He pushed me, fired me up, and kind of guided me without saying it. Talking about him now makes me thankful. Not everyone gets to work with someone that great, and I did, even when it was hard. It made me the actor and the person I turned out to be. In July 2010, the legendary Tony Curtis got really bad news from the doctor. He had chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, a lung problem that gets worse and makes breathing harder. For a guy whose whole life was big, bright movie moments and unforgettable characters, this was a tough new part. Even though Tony was always a fighter, his health kept going down. Sadly, on September 29, 2010, he suddenly had a heart attack and passed away at 85 years old. Fans and friends were super sad and remembered his huge talent, his charm, and how warm and funny he was in real life. Tony Curtis dying wasn't just lose it, a movie star. It felt like the end of a whole amazing time in Hollywood, and a reminder that even the biggest stars don't live forever.